Welcome to Module 5 of the S7 Odyssey project. We'll be editing some existing code and adding some more code in the system routine in this module. Thanks. This is where we left off in the last video. I'm going to modify this existing code. Notice that we're online here. If I start modifying right here, it's going to just take us offline. A couple of things that we want to make sure of. We are going to make sure here that if we are auto-cycling already, so I already have a bit set up here called Autocycle. If we are already auto-cycling and someone presses the manual push button, we are not going to allow them to go into manual mode. So this is really not much of an option if you were in the middle of doing something like picking something up and setting it somewhere. You would not want somebody to just be able to press the button and flip you into manual mode. It would interrupt the cycle and allow somebody to move some of the actuators around. That might not be such a good idea. By the same token, and this is not really necessary, we might not want someone to be able to go into auto mode if we were faulted. Since I believe we already have a fault bit, let's go ahead and put that in here also. So pretty straightforward logic. If we have an existing fault, and it looks like we don't have a fault bit here. I remember making a fault word, but I guess I didn't make a fault bit. So where's a logical place to put that? Once again, this is one way to look at this. I can look at what's been used in the symbol list. But another way to do this is kind of a handy place to cover this. There's something called a cross-reference. Very useful. We're going to regenerate the reference data. That really builds it from scratch. It doesn't matter which one of these items you pick. It is going to allow you to toggle between them in the cross-reference with these little buttons up here. So really doesn't matter which one you pick here. This is the cross-reference. It shows where everything was used. Notice that some things were disregarded here. I don't mind looking at everything. Always keep track of whether you're filtering your results or not. In this case, the only thing it added was this FC1, so it really didn't cause any problems. But what I wanted to look at here was this usage table. This is very convenient. In the last video, you remember I added a couple of bits up in the M100 range, so everything's showing up here as far as which bits we've used. And it looks like we've got, of course, always on and always off in here. A more convenient place might be to just look here and say, you know, we've got our auto mode, our manual mode. We might put our fault right in here. So I think I'm going to use M2.0. It's okay to minimize this and leave it open. So since this hasn't been assigned to anything, actually Autocycle. Let's see whether we'll try M2.1. Of course, that was a usage table. Cycle stop permissive, M2.2, M2.3. I believe we've used everything up to manual mode here. So I'm going to try M2.5. Of course, a look at our symbol table would have shown what we had named. But another nice thing about naming everything is that if I type in an address and it was already used like I did before, when I typed in M2.0, that should create a flag that says you need to probably pick something without a name. So that's why you always want to name your symbols. Very important. So in this case, we're going to call this fault. I'm going to again add this on the fly, and we're just going to call it fault. And then I'm going to type in a comment here saying that this is a general fault in the system. Okay, so now you look at the logic. if you push the auto push button and you have a fault present, say you're in manual mode, it will not allow you to go into auto mode. By the same token, if you are in Autocycle, already auto-cycling, then you will not be able to go into manual mode. Those are somewhat common things to do. Notice also that we've put a couple comments up here in our networks. Auto mode, manual mode, it tells what the network was used for. These are actually not comments, they're titles. If I wanted to comment, I can do that here. So the comment here is a different thing than the title. We're going to go ahead and start Autocycle here. Now, Autocycle is a situation where you press a button for a certain period of time, and if it's okay to start the system, then you maybe beep a buzzer or something or sound a horn while the machine's starting up for, say, 3 seconds, and then the machine starts. This gives someone a chance to yell out and stop you from starting the machine. So this is another fairly common thing in machine control. We're going to do some other things on process control here also, but this is for machine control. So to start with, we need an Autocycle push button. Not sure we have one of those yet. I have a cycle stop permissive and a request cycle start push button. I do. I think I'm using a physical push button here. So we're going to go ahead and use that. We want to make sure that we're allowed to start the cycle. So I've already made a cycle. I have a cycle stop permissive. I do not have a cycle start permissive. So I'm going to use another bit here. Sometimes I abbreviate permissive PRM. In this case, I think I'm just going to go ahead and abbreviate PERM instead. This might be things like power is on in the machine and you don't have a fault, and air is on the machine and no one is in any of the guarding, none of the doors are open. So that might be something like a cycle start permissive, but that needs to be true to be able to start the cycle, press the button, and sound the horn. So what this does is this is going to run a timer, and we're going to use one of the old school timers here. There are box timers and there are these little coil timers here, and this particular one is an on delay timer. You can either double click it or drag it. I like these little timers, although they're kind of, like I said, old school here. It's looking for a time here, and you have to express the time in a very old school way. And we're going to give it 3 seconds. So S5T set point format, that's an S5 time format. And then we're going to name this. I do abbreviate a lot of things, and TMR is one of my abbreviations for a timer. All of these symbols can be done ahead of time, of course. You can type all these into the symbol table and you'll be all prepared to simply use them, as I've been doing, or you can do it on the fly the way I've been doing it here. Now we're going to add a branch, and when the timer is done, the done bit for this timer is simply T0. Then we will set our auto cycle bit, provided we had a cycle start permissive. Go back up to the bit logic folder, use the set, and there's auto cycle. Now to stop the auto cycle, that's a little bit tricky, so we're going to add another rung here. We're going to use the cycle stop push button. And you can't just necessarily stop the cycle anytime. So we are going to first off make sure that we are in auto cycle when we make the request. And then we're going to set a bit called cycle stop request. So this is one of the ones that I put the space in there. And one of the advantages of putting the space is it doesn't run on like this. I don't particularly worry about that, but if you put the spaces in there, it'll actually space it out like that. So this just remembers that you've pressed this push button, and then at a time when it's okay to stop the machine, such as when the Autocycle, a specific sequence perhaps, has finished, then that's when you'll actually unlatch the Autocycle bit and the Autocycle cycle stop request. Now there I just typed in the address directly, but I could have selected it as I did before. The cycle is allowed to stop again. This is maybe sequence at 0, and then we reset both the Autocycle and the cycle stop request. Go ahead and space this out so we can kind of see what we've done here. This is just another system function. Now, did I leave something out? I did. So you don't want to be able to start the cycle unless you are in auto mode. So we're going to go ahead and put that in here at the last minute also. You have to be in auto mode. You press the cycle start push button. The cycle start permissive is present. It runs the timer. When the timer is done, then you set your Autocycle bit. So you're in the process of auto cycling. If you press the cycle stop push button and you were in Autocycle, then you will latch a cycle stop request. If the cycle stop request is present and you have a cycle stop permissive, you will reset Autocycle and reset the cycle stop request. So that is pretty much the end of this video, and that covers most of our system routines. We will probably modify this a little bit later. There are always things that are particular to your project. Thank you.